Ever have a goal or a dream? Looks impossible. Yeah. Or your life has been rudely interrupted by somebody else's. Anyway, good morning. This is Aunt Beth. Welcome to my lamppost. I'm in chapter 2 of Matthew, and I was so struck by both Matthew 1 and Matthew 2. Dreams. There's at least 4 that are listed here that guided people's behavior. You know, some people have dreams for you, maybe your parents, somebody else. Sure, you have your own dreams. I'm sure Joseph did. You know, the first dream that we hear about is, he's engaged to be married and finds out his fiancée is pregnant, and it isn't him. You know, and all of a sudden, I'm sure his life is crashing down around him. And, his plan, his dream, maybe is to have a family and stay where he is and just have a normal life. That didn't happen. And God interrupts, and it's not because he did anything wrong, but he's needed. Do you ever think about what a fantastic parent Joseph was? Anyway, but he's needed to help God's dream come true. God's a family man. Anyway, so that's chapter 1. His life is crashing all around him. And then in chapter 2, the wise men have a dream and they act on it, and they know what to do and where to go. And it's interesting, they go to the religious people for counsel, and the religious people are clueless. That was a detour. I guess they felt like they were being politically correct. I don't know. And then Joseph, God continues to guide him and speaks to him in a dream. Job, is it Job that talks about God opens our heart in the night seasons? So it's really important that your mind be clear when you go to sleep. No junky stuff, no horror stuff, but I digress. Anyway, but God speaks to him in 3 different dreams in Matthew chapter 2. But he tells him where, tells him when, tells him why, tells him how, and he funds the dream. So maybe God's given you a dream, but the details aren't a little real clear. Sometimes maybe he's given you a dream and a funding, and it's a progressive thing. But you can color within the lines, God said, go to Egypt. And they did, but he didn't say where, that was up to them. I think sometimes we get too freaked out. Either it's everything or nothing, you need clothes. God gives you money for clothes. He doesn't specify what color. It's up to you, That's just a rough example. But I think we're afraid of our dreams. Sometimes acting out on them. Sometimes if it's our dream, it's not happening. Maybe it's the wrong one. But I think the other interesting thing about this is how Joseph protected the dream. He didn't blab about it to everybody. Just got up and did it. So we have all these opportunities in front of us. think we have to say, all right, Lord, what's your dream in all the midst of this? Can I hear past my own heart to hear the heart of God? Is it flowing, or is it a struggle every step of the way? Even though there's hard times, if it's God, it'll sort of flow. I don't know how to explain it any other way. But and if God has asked you to do something, He'll fund it, along the way. Won't necessarily fund it at the very beginning. But it's interesting, when the wise men arrived, they were in a house. So that says they'd been in Bethlehem for a while. And He didn't use the money to buy a house or set up a business in Bethlehem. All the gold and frankincense and myrrh, that's a lot of money. He didn't use it for that. He used it to fund the dream. They had to live on something when they were in Egypt and then come back. But He also protected the dream. So I think it's important to ask ourselves if God's given this dream, or is it just something that I want really badly? And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think we need to check in with God, especially if life so rudely interrupts us, if we're on the right path, and seek His guidance. Joseph in chapter 1, he didn't make a, instant decision. He thought for a long time about what was the right thing to do. And that's when God spoke. And, but also, Joseph didn't blab about it. He got guidance from the Lord. He went forward. When there, stop when there isn't any more guidance. And then He shows up again, and there's more guidance, and you just do what's in front of you. But it's also funded, provided for. But we need to do our part. We need to seek the Lord, but also protect the dream that God has given us. Don't be blabbing about it. It's almost like a pregnancy. You don't talk about it when the baby's just first growing. It's too much attention. Other people are having their input, and it ends up being somebody else's dream, not yours. So, just my thoughts on Matthew 2. Whose dream? For us? For you? Whose dream? Protect the dream. Until next time.